So, so today's flow, we are going to discuss fraud detection flow. So let's take a look how this fraud detection flow looks like. Okay. So here, first step, the transaction initiated. So customer is doing a transaction, maybe depositing a check deposit, moving money or withdrawing some money, any kind of financial transaction happening. That's the input. Okay. Step number one. Step number two, transaction received by the real time. Okay, so request received by the banking system, basic validation performed. So we discuss in the uh, core banking flow. So next one, data enrichment. So customer profile keep account history. So when a customer is doing a transaction, let's assume customer is depositing a check deposit, right? In order to analyze, detect fraud, let's say there is no system, a manual person is reviewing this transaction, right? So to review this transaction, this manual operator needs lot of information, right? Like a transaction related, customer related, right? Example, how long this customer um, is in customer with bank, right? And how much money he is in savings account, checking account, does he owe any money, is there any pending payment, right? So a lot of data required to make a decision here, right? And also it's need the transaction related. So we talk about the customers depositing a check, right? So we need how much is the check amount, what's the date on the check. So this step number three, system is gathering required information to make a decision, system decision, whether this transaction is um, genuine or not, right? So that's why here step number three is data enrichment. Some data are listed here: customer profile, account history, device channel info, location where this customer is making, merchant info, past transaction behavior. So here the step number three, data enrichment. Step number four, this data send it to the fraud model. So fraud, it can be a manual model. So we are talking about digital model. So inside the fraud model, there are rules set up. So for example, for the fraud engine can immediately analyze this customer last 3 month pattern, right? So this customer every month he deposits a check, 2000 rent check. So suddenly this customer depositing $7,000 check. So that's the anomaly, right? So fraud engine can analyze immediately and check how this transaction is risk, right? So those are happening inside the fraud engine based on the rule setup. Okay, so here after evaluation, the risk, this send to the risk compare, right? Because we have transaction related data, right? Like this customer depositing check, this we have some information in the customer KIF level, customer profile, in the profile, how risk this customer is, right? So everything is compared and the decision is made here whether we should allow this transaction or it's a fraudulent transaction, right? So either based on the decision, risk or the fraud is analyzed here, it should be approved or sent to a manual review for operator to take a look. System cannot make a decision here, so it's go to so and so, it's go to review, and if it is 100% confirmed, transaction blocked or customer notified, reason code captured here. Okay, so this is the basic high level fraud detection flow. And number 6 here, decision is applied in the real time. Number 7, customer notification. Number 8, feedback for learning, right? This analytical step. Okay, but this is the basic flow how it should work. Okay, so now let's go back to our exercise here. So you are a business analyst, you are applying for a fraud detection domain as a business analyst. So your responsibilities would be gather fraud detection requirements. So here you see work with fraud operation teams, create process map, write user stories and acceptance criteria. There are, you need to understand how to analyze data, like especially to build rules as a business analyst, you don't need to write rules. There are a separate team, but you need to understand this data, how we can use this data to write rules to prevent fraudulent activities. So that's what meant is analyze SQL data, right? We are using SQL as a database tool. So, but you have to know how to analyze this fraud related data. Okay. So validate API integration, support UAT testing. So these are basic business analyst BAU. Investigate fraud scenarios, work with AML risk and compliance team. Okay. So business scenario, no star bank process million of transactions every day. Some transactions are genuine, some transactions are fraudulent. So the bank wants a real-time fraud detection system that can detect suspicious activities, calculate risk score, block high-risk transactions, route medium-risk transactions for manual review. So approve low-risk transaction instantly. As a business analyst, your job is to understand the entire fraud detection workflow. Okay. So now do a few exercises to understand our learning. Okay. The first, fraud detection happens in real time. Okay. So fraud system calculate risk score. High risk transaction may be blocked, right? We reject the transaction. Medium risk transaction may go to operator, manual review, right? I would say manual review. Low risk transaction are usually approved. If other rules are approved, this is approved. Okay. Let me make. Okay. So the process flow: customer initiated transactions, core banking receive transaction, fraud engine receive request, risk score calculation, decision engine approve review decline, customer notification, audit login. Okay, so this is a basic fraud detection flow. So current state, many fraud reviews are performed manually. Fraud analyst investigate suspicious transaction after they occur. So customers may lose money before fraud is detected. Okay, so that's why we need a real-time fraud detection flow. So fraud system evaluates transaction instantly. Risk score is calculated in milliseconds. Suspicious transactions are blocked before money leaves the account. So now let's identify some business requirement for this flow. So first one, system shall evaluate every transaction using fraud rules. Okay. So this is one of the rule. Okay. System shall calculate risk score between 0 to 1000. Sorry. System shall approve transaction below the low risk threshold. System shall send medium risk transaction for manual review. System shall block high risk transactions. System shall maintain audit logs. System shall notify customers when transactions are declined. System shall support all real-time fraud detection. Okay. So here you can see risk. These are the requirements when we are implementing fraud implementation. So now let's match requirement. Okay, so risk score calculation, what we need here. So we need here fraud engine. Okay. Next one, transaction posting. So transaction posting is core banking. So we try to identify which systems involves. Okay. SMS notification service. Okay. Okay, fraud queue. So something fraud analyst portal. So the systems are here. Okay, you can copy from here. Customer account information, customer database, right? Okay, so functional requirements, we can identify the functional requirements. System shall receive transaction request, system shall receive customer profile information for the data enrichment. Okay, system shall retrieve transaction history, is happening the data enrichment. System shall evaluate fraud rules. Now the data sent to the fraud engine or fraud model. System shall generate risk score, the evaluation is happening. System shall determine final fraud decision, whether transaction should be approved or declined or manual review. System shall store fraud audit records. Okay, behind the scene, the microservice architecture here: customer channel, transaction service, fraud screening service, detection service, core banking service, notification service, fraud audit service. Okay, so now let's write the user stories here. So as a fraud analyst, I want suspicious transaction to be routed to a review queue so that I can investigate potential fraud before funds are released. Okay, or you can write as a fraud analyst, I want suspicious transaction to be automatically routed to a review queue. Okay, so that I can investigate potential fraud before funds are released. Okay, so something like this. So acceptance criteria. So some sample acceptance: system must calculate risk score for every transaction, system must block transaction above fraud threshold, system must generate audit record for every fraud decisions. Okay, so we'll write some acceptance criteria for this one. Acceptance criteria: system must calculate a fraud risk score for every transaction, system must decline transactions when the risk score exceeds the fraud threshold. These are few examples. Okay, so based on the user story, you can write. Just want to give an idea what type of acceptance criteria will create an audit log for every fraud decision. Okay, so now let's move on to SQL questions. Okay, so here the customer table, we have 5 records. Okay, so you can see customer ID, first name, risk rating. So these informations are in the core banking system profile information in the KIF level. Okay, and account table, customer ID and customer balance. Okay, so these customers are different balance, these are different, it's just a sample. So transaction, customer doing amount, this customer doing either moving money or withdrawing money or depositing a check. something like that. So now let's understand. We have risk level and the customer detail. We have customer account balance. We have customer transaction detail. So so these are the fraud score, risk scores. Okay. Now how we can combine and make a decision using this one. Okay, so your first question, display all customers. It's very simple. You will use the select command and asterisk for all from customers. So if you put the column name here instead of asterisk, and you can get the particular column name. So here we are asking customer table. This is the table name. So second exercise, display all high risk customers. So high risk will come from the fraud score table. Okay, so here you see here we have risk rating and we have fraud risk score. So we are asking customer high risk customer. Okay, so that means we want the risk rating here. So we will use the customer table to get this data. So again, you will use the same command, select keyword asterisk from customers. You are adding a filter here, which is the where condition, where so we are asking to only show us the risk rating which is equivalent to high. I hope that clear for you. So let's move on to the third SQL exercise. Here third SQL exercise, display transaction greater than 10,000. So we are fetching information from the transaction table. So you have seen the transaction table here, transaction table, and we are asking the transactions above greater than 10,000. So here we will not include this one. We'll include this one. 20,000 will include this one, and will not include 400 and 500 and 400 less than 10,000. So these two transactions are ignored and rest everything displayed. Okay. So writing select asterisk from transaction table, the filter option where amount. So you are, when you are doing analytics, please be careful at this time. So there is meaning equal and greater than. So here we are not checking the equal limit equal. So we are checking only it should be greater than 10,000. So it should be 10,000 and above. Okay, so you have to clearly get the condition right. So next one, display fraud score above 800. It's similar, above condition. Okay, so we are fetching this information from fraud score table here. So we have fraud score and greater than 800. So select all columns from fraud score table where the risk is greater than 800. Display, fifth exercise, display customer name, account ID and balance. So here you are specifically writing select because we need these are in two tables, so we need to join this one. So we are joining customer and account table, right? So here customer name coming from the first table, okay, customer table, and we have account ID, so that's coming from account table. So here how we can write this query. So I'll show you the table first. So this is the account table and this is the customer table. So we want to combine these two tables to so these are the two tables we'll combine. So how we can combine? Select customer first name. So we are using why the C is there? C is we are referring to customer table. So C dot first name, A dot account, which is the account table, account name, we are referring to A dot account ID, A balance, which is balance also coming from account table. So here the joining condition on customer ID, a customer ID. So we need a common column to join this one, right? The customer ID is in the both account ID and the account ID, sorry, the customer ID. So here these one are this 101, these are in both table. Okay, so that's how we can join these two tables. Okay, So next one, display all transaction amount per account. So here the question is, we need to calculate select account ID some amount from transaction group by account ID. So what we are asking here, display total transaction account per account. So a customer can have a different total, right? So here you see, here we have only unique record 101, the customer is a unique, 102 as a unique. So let's say this customer has multiple accounts, we can calculate everything, okay, because customer ID is going to be same, but we have multiple account IDs, okay. So that's how we can calculate this one. So next one, find the highest fraud score. So we are using select max keyword here to calculate the risk score and getting the fraud score from the fraud score table, okay. So next question, display all transaction with customer names. So we have to join. So we are joining select customer first name from the transaction table, transaction ID and transaction amount from customer C, which is the customer table, join account, which is account table, on customer ID and customer ID, join transaction T on A account ID and transaction. So we are joining two tables together here. The three tables we are joining here in order to display this information. Okay, so we have customer table, okay, and we have here account table to join this information. So all three tables, sorry, I mentioned two tables, all three tables, customer table, account table and transaction table, we can join together to display this information, okay. So next one, display transaction where risk score is greater than 900. So this is very easy. So select from fraud score the risk where risk score is greater than 900. Last question, display customer name, transaction amount, risk score, sort by risk score descending value. So this is a complex query, you don't need to worry about, so I'll just quickly go through. So we are asking customer name we need, transaction amount we need, risk score need for a given customer, okay. So select we'll get first name will get from the customer table, transaction amount will get from the transaction table, risk amount will get the fraud table here, fraud score table. So first from customer C, join account A on customer ID, join transaction T, which is a transaction table, on A account ID, transaction account ID, join fraud score F on transaction ID, F transaction ID, order by F risk score descending order, okay. So you can go through again how this join is made, okay. So this is a sample API request. So you can see here fraud score API we have field customer ID, account ID, amount and channel, okay. So which system consumes this API? Fraud engine is using this one. So now let's take a look at a few test cases. Test case 1, verify low risk transaction approval. This is how transaction approved, expected result. Test case 2, verify medium risk transaction, it should be review, so expected result, transaction routed to a review queue. Test case number 3, very high risk transaction block, expected result, transaction decline. Test case 4, verify audit log creation, expected result, audit record stored. Test case number 5, verify customer notification, expected result, SMS send after decline. So defect exercise. So this is a simple scenario where transaction risk score is equal to 950, expected result, transactions should be declined, actual result, transaction approved. So this is an example how a defect can be raised, okay. So a few questions here can be come from this flow. What is fraud detection in banking? What is fraud risk score? Why are fraud system integrated with core banking? So these you have to know answers for these questions, okay. Okay, what happens when a transaction exceeds the fraud threshold? What is the difference between fraud review and fraud decline? Where are audit logs important? Why are audit logs important? Sorry. Which API is commonly used in fraud detection? What SQL queries would you run to investigate fraud? What information is used to calculate risk scores? How would you write a user story fraud for fraud screening? Okay, so this one, this summary, fraud detection flow, risk score calculation, approvers, reviewers, decline decision, core banking integration, fraud APIs, SQL joins, aggregations, fraud investigation query, QA question, BA interview preparation. Okay. All right. So that's all about. So here I'll again data, how we store the data here, how the data being used, how the fraud rule engine is running here. Okay, so this is a rule engine. Amount limits are there, different thresholds are there. Geolocation, block list, time, and pattern rules are there. This will send to a machine learning algorithm. Risk calculation there, decision logic. So the action taken here. Okay, different risk scoring factors like transaction amount, high amount, transaction velocity, mainly in short time. So let's say for a customer can deposit 10 checks only per week. So this is exceeding. So that's the transaction velocity example. New beneficiary, new payee. Let's say this customer deposit checks for John Smith, issued by John Smith, but suddenly he start depositing different payee. Geolocation anomaly. So let's say this customer geolocation in Canada. So suddenly this transaction reported in Germany. So those kind of different country. Device IP. So let's say customer is using iPhone. So suddenly this is detected in a different location in Europe and different IP and different Wi-Fi. So account age, this is also matter. So this customer is 20 years old and making huge large transactions. So those are customer risk rating. So these are few consideration to calculate the scoring factors. So threshold here, score rating 0 to 300, less threshold, approve automatically. Send manual to queue 300, 1 to 700, 701 and 1000 declines. Okay, so few key takeaways: fraud detection happen in real time within millisecond. Use a combination of rules, machine learning and external intelligence. Risk score determines the action. Human reviews the use medium risk transactions. Continuous learning improve fraud detection over time. Okay, so that's it for today. Thank you very much everyone. So one thing I want to tell you guys, so finally I purchased a mic. I'm not sure how this sound quality be, because a lot of students are commenting the audio quality is not good. So let's see how this is going to be. Thank you very much everyone for your